The fall of Judah. The sun set low over the land of Judah, casting long, dark shadows across the hills, as though the earth itself knew what was coming. The kingdom of Solomon had been a beacon of glory, his wisdom echoing through the ages. However, his son, Rehoboam, would bring upheaval to the once united kingdom and empire. The winds of change had swept through the land, carrying with them whispers of ancient power and unseen forces. The infiltration of the Blues was complete by the time Rehoboam took the throne. The same ancient manipulators, faceless and cunning, had begun to weave their influence into the veins of the world, manipulating the will of men. They came disguised as allies, yet they were harbingers of ruin. They whispered into the ears of Judah's leaders, twisting their hearts, turning their gaze away from the old ways. As Solomon's kingdom cracked, so too did the very soul of Judah. The Blues slipped in unnoticed at first, among the heathens spoken of in sacred texts, infiltrating the halls of power, bringing with them the worship of false gods and hollow promises of power. The Blues fed the new king's vision with poison. They whispered that Judah, with its rich traditions and spiritual sciences, was destined for more, that the Jews, who carried the ancient wisdom of Noah's lineage, were not just a people but the chosen stewards of a greater order. They stoked the fires of ego, convincing Judah's rulers that they were greater than their forest-dwelling Assyrian kin, who honored balance, the earth, and the eternal cycles of nature. Convinced that they, the true gold in the rainbow of faith, were the highest embodiment of divine order, Judah's leaders began to forget the balance that had once united their people. This poisonous ideology twisted the Jews' deep understanding of the cosmos and sacred mysteries into a tool of division. The Blues whispered that they were destined not merely to serve the palace economy but to rule it, to replace the kings of Assyria as the supreme managers of this ancient system. For generations, this poison festered, creeping through Judah's halls and through the hearts of kings and priests alike. It was no longer about wisdom, it was about control. Judah began to see itself not as a contributor to the vast palace economy of Assyria, where different peoples shared knowledge and resources, but as its rightful heir. The desire to sit on the throne of the King of Kings consumed them, overshadowing the wisdom that had once guided their ancestors. As the years passed, this resentment grew, not just in the hearts of Judah's kings but in its people. The separation of Judah from the rest of Israel was not a simple political schism, it was the final stroke of a carefully laid plan. The Blues had convinced Judah that it was superior, that the rest of Israel, which had aligned itself with the Assyrians, had fallen from grace. In contrast, the other tribes embraced the Assyrian palace system, not as slaves but as equals, contributing to the maintenance of the balance of the ancient world. But Judah, intoxicated by visions of power, could not see this. The fracture was inevitable. Judah pulled away, isolating itself in its delusion of grandeur while the rest of Israel walked alongside Assyria, building and contributing to a greater good. Judah had forgotten the lesson of ego and the balance between earth and spirit. In their quest to claim the title of King of Kings, they lost sight of their true role as stewards of spiritual wisdom and guardians of knowledge, not rulers of men. Judah's leaders believed they could rise above their fate, that they could outmaneuver the course of history with the power of kingship. But the Blues had already twisted the knife. Judah's downfall was not the work of Babylon alone, it was the result of generations of manipulation, the slow erosion of wisdom by the pursuit of ego. By the time the armies of Babylon marched, Judah had already crumbled from within, its leaders blinded by the false promise of empire. But not all were lost to the folly of kings. While the leadership of Judah stumbled in its pursuit of power, the true heart of the Jewish people remained. The Jews who walked the streets of Assyria, those who had joined the palace economy, knew their role. They were the keepers of spiritual science and understood that true power was not in ruling over others but in grasping the deeper mysteries of existence. Among these were the Samaritans, who had played their part within Assyria's palace economy and returned not as wanderers but with wives, families, and a newfound connection. They returned to the northern territories with this deeper understanding, contributing to the cultural and spiritual fabric of their homeland. They walked not as slaves but as equal contributors, sharing their knowledge with their Assyrian kin, building temples of thought, not empire. These Jews, the true sons of Noah, honored the balance of the world while the kings of Judah sought to tear it apart. The fall of Judah was inevitable, but the legacy of the Jewish people was not lost. Those who had embraced Assyria's palace economy, who understood the ancient balance, would carry their knowledge forward. They were the true heroes of this story, the Jews who, alongside Assyrians, the Arameans, the Samaritans, and all the others within the society, worked not for kingship but for the preservation of an eternal truth. They knew the dangers of ego, the lessons that came from the ancient rainbow of faith. And though Judah fell, the wisdom of their people would rise again, carried on the winds of time, long after the false kings and their kingdoms were dust. For this is a story of ego, a lesson in what happens when the balance is lost, when wisdom is replaced by ambition. The blues had turned Judah's eyes away from the truth, but they could never extinguish the flame of knowledge that burned within the heart of the Jewish people. As the fires of Babylon raged, this ancient flame would endure, lighting the way forward into a new era.